Hello, internet family. Okay. Hello, internet family. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and you are watching. Um, uh-uh. You are watching which is going to last forever, and that is me with Media Ministry. So you are listening right now to Monday Afternoon Quarterback. With Adam's Rib. I know I've sat over here and you are listening to Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and this is the Juneteenth edition of Monday afternoon quarterback. So I'm starting a little late this afternoon, just because number one, I overslept. Let me see here. There we go. So I'm still setting up and everything. This weekend was even though it was a celebration weekend for those of us in the Black community, because we celebrated the second official holiday date of Juneteenth, which I think is awesome. It is always an awesome thing to celebrate freedom and the end of slavery. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, if you listen to certain components of the Black community, you wouldn't think slavery was over. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute. Yeah. The arguments that you see happening within our community, you would not know that slavery was over. Okay? Because of some of the mindsets that I'm running into. So I'm going on my Facebook. So, to talk about a few headlines here. So, comedian Monique issued an apology to D.L. Hughley's family, but still hangs on to what she said about him. Now, on some level, as a woman, I kind of understand that. Because bringing his children into the whole situation, especially the clip about him knowing that his daughter was in a situation, when you heard him go into more detail about the situation, you basically, it was an issue of him being very dismissive of a situation with his daughter and a friend who was in her same age, and the friend did something inappropriate to her. I felt like that was going a little below the belt to I remember that interview with him and Sway, because I can remember it was during the time of the whole Bill Cosby thing, and he was talking about how easy it is to not believe even one of your own children. Now, a lot of us commentators have been dealing with harassment out of the Kevin Samuels camp. And I have this to say. Your leader, right before he died, basically said to women, basically advised a woman to not believe her child if she was told by her child that her husband did something inappropriate to her. And that's an L. Like, you know, I'm like, how do you give such irresponsible advice to a single mother, and then have the nerve to tell single mothers, well, this is why y'all taking it ill by having these
There's
children.
always a sense of relief when.
Yeah, I'm looking at TV at the same time. So I just think that's interesting that someone would give and then say that, and then have the nerve to use the buzzword healing the black community. They're not trying to heal the black community. You're trying to help black men get over on black women. Yeah, I don't have no problem telling the truth. Okay. Let me see here. Because I'm trying to look. Okay. So most of the headlines that I'm seeing have to do with how people are celebrating Juneteenth. In Akron, there was a man involved in a weekend shooting outside the Akron bar. Pride weekend, a boom for Columbus businesses, which is good. Local trio empowers women entrepreneurs. Janet Huber is getting a new role on AMC's show Damascus, which I think is awesome to see her back working again. Okay, but I want to talk about some things. If you're a content creator and you're listening to me, have you ever had conversations and you think, man, this would make a good this would make a good podcast, or this would make a good live, and then you get to the point and do the live and you wind up not talking about the thing that you thought would make a live? I'm gonna break that tradition with me today. So today I was looking at, so over the weekend, for me, it was a little uneventful, other than celebrating Juneteenth and missing out on the festivals that we were having here in Columbus, which won't happen next year. I can guarantee it, because I will have more money. I will have more finances. One of the things that I'm saying over myself is I'm believing that I see travel and wealth in my future. I also see marriage in my future. One of the things that I have been saying is she's not the one. And you can kind of take it however you want. I'm also saying to my enemies in the church, I choose to stay winning. So you are never going to win over me. My Heavenly Father's word promises that no weapon that is formed against me shall prosper. So nothing that the enemy brings is going to cause me to falter, and is going to cause me to fail at the things that I really want to accomplish. Now, the reason why I'm saying all these things is because, as I said when I first came onto the podcast, today's live, I talked about the fact that we are celebrating. I feel like I'm going through a little bit of supernatural warfare with this with this phone. So, with this Juneteenth, one of the things that I am looking at is the fact that it seems like mentally, as Black people, okay, one of the things I'm looking at as Black people is the ways that many of us are still enslaved mentally. Okay, so we're celebrating, freedom, but in many ways, many of us are still mentally enslaved. We're still having discussions over colorism. Okay, we're still, and we're having those discussions because many of us, Black men, are still hung up on a woman's physical appearance in comparison to a paper bag. We're having arguments. Black men are still weaponizing white women against Black women. Okay. You have some of us in the Black church that are still treating Black women like property, to the point where some of us are being trafficked. I left a situation with a church, and I've talked about the fact that they're using witchcraft to try to convince me that God wants me to be traded to the white community, which he doesn't. Okay. And trying to convince me to be trafficked. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm always very leery of, so I am not a prostitute. I don't get down with that type of behavior. I'm always a little leery of any denomination pressed about you calling. Okay. Whatever you do is not going to work here. So it's always amazing to me when people accuse people who come forward about their behavior and, they just didn't get their way on something. No, it's a little deeper than that. But you can mask it behind that. Okay? But like I said, in many ways, we're still very, very much enslaved mentally. You have some of us who think that you have Black women who think that dating a white man or marrying out is the solution to their problems with romance, and really it goes a lot deeper than that. Okay. Bit of a slave mentality. You have Black men who think that marrying a white woman is the key to peace and happiness. Okay. That shows you how in many ways that we are still yet enslaved. Okay. As I said on an earlier podcast, when you have men fussing over the latest Supreme Court justice having a white husband and Kamala Harris having a white husband, you allowed white men to convince you that their women are more appetizing to marry. You allowed them to put that standard on you, and now you want to get mad because Black women aren't exactly sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to come to your senses and marry us. You cannot get mad at Black women deciding that they don't want to wait around for you to realize that they're worth marrying. Okay, so getting mad at Black women because they're not doing that is kind of an exercise in stupidity. Okay, I was also looking at, so one of my favorite things on YouTube to watch is some of the older sitcoms that were made. I call it the YouTube. There's a channel called the Norman Lear Effect. I think labeling it the Norman Lear Effect, and you know, I give props to Norman Lear for what he was able to do with a lot of those shows, because they're still classics, they're still well written, they still have a message to go along with them. So I like to call them the Norman Lear, Eric Monti, and Mike Evans. At Sphere. Okay, that's just the thing that I came up with just now. And I say that because Norman Lear has gotten his flowers in the land of the living. Two rather unsung brothers that that helped create some of the series haven't quite got their flowers. One of them is Eric Monti. If you remember Eric Monti was responsible for writing the movie Cooley High. Eric Monti also had a very big role in creating the show What's Happening. And What's Happening now, I think it is the spinoff. He played a heavy role in helping with Good Times, as well as Mike Evans. Mike Evans, you remember Mike Evans. If you're a real Jeffersons fan, you know that Mike Evans played the role of Lionel Jefferson on both All in the Family, and then on All in the Family spinoff, The Jeffersons. So Mike Evans pretty much, I think, you know, was basing Good Times around his own upbringing. And they dealt with a lot of issues that happened, you know, especially the shows that had larger black casts, dealt with a whole lot of issues that we were going through at the time, and there's still issues now. So they did several shows on What's Happening that had to do with affirmative action. So affirmative action, if you don't know, is a hiring system that basically says that one out of, I'd say if you have like 10 employees, at least one of those employees needs to be a woman or a minority. And the way the shows are written, I just watched one today, and it was What's Happening, and the one of my favorite characters on the show is Shirley Hempfield's character, Shirley. So she was hired at an office, and the main reason for hiring her was because she was black. Now, you might think, well, you know, that's supposed to be a good thing. Well, she wasn't qualified for this job. She wasn't qualified for the job, but they hired her just so they could look minority friendly. Okay, which there was a lot of that kind of went down. But a lot of people don't realize, because I can remember being at jobs and people claiming that I was there because they needed a black person. And that wasn't quite it. Number one, I was qualified for every job that I ever had. So it bothers me. And I remember so I can remember my father, who, you know, spent a little bit of time as a Republican, you know, saying that they're against quotas and blah, 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 blah. First of all, if you're hired to a job and you show them that you know your stuff and you show that you're qualified, then you're not an affirmative action reject. No, and the bad thing about representing it that way is you're basically, like, I'm in favor of affirmative action. You know, anything that keeps my people working, I'm cool with. However, the problem that I have with people who are not in favor of affirmative action is basically, it's the same scenario. There's the assumption that you really weren't qualified for the job. You only got it because you're black. Never mind the tons of white people who hire other white people who are not qualified for jobs simply because they're white. Okay, I can remember reading a book by B.B. Moore Campbell called Brothers and Sisters. And B.B. Moore Campbell, for those of us who are still black bookies, black bookworms, is the mother of actress Maya Campbell. And if you watched Maya's Iyanla, you know that Maya Campbell had a pretty tumultuous relationship with her mother. Iyanla, back in the good old days of Essence magazine, Iyanla used to had a column with them, as well as BB working closely with them as well. So, being a book fan, I read Brothers and Sisters, and there was a line in there where the character of Esther, I think her name was, said, "I'm in favor of affirmative action that benefits black people." And so her white coworker was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, she said, "When you say that it's less than qualified black people, it's as though every white person who has ever held a job was 100% 100% qualified for that job." Okay. And I remember saying this to a young man. I said, if you only hired the qualified, there wouldn't be a whole lot of white people working. So I have a problem when people present affirmative action as though most of the people who are picked due to affirmative action are not qualified. They're just there so that you can beat a quota and look color friendly. Okay? And so, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I'm watching, that I watched when I was younger, I'm watching now. And it's interesting the perspective that I have on some of the shows that I used to watch, and they were good shows. They were quality shows, and they still are. But it also shows me how much my perspective has changed, because now I'm watching it as a 55-year-old grown adult that is participating in society and letting people, and at an age where I have a grandchild, and a grandchild, and you just have a different perspective on life. You have a different perspective on how things look. When I listen to some of my favorite social commentators, I still think about that. So let me see here. What happened on The View? Okay, because I'm looking at different stuff too, so I hate to hesitate. I'm so sorry. But like I said before, it is still a relevant issue because we're still going through things in the job market. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think that the Trump presidency being so polarizing has hurt us in a lot of ways. And, it's going to take Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at least 2 terms to fix up all of the mess ups that occurred during that presidency. It wasn't a good presidency, and any Trumper who thought it was a good presidency is very delusional. Very delusional. He did a horrible job. He did every bit the horrible job I thought he was going to do. But it's just been a mess. So this week I will be podcasting on different things. I was going to say earlier, I watched the docu-series on the FDLS, Fundamental Church of Latter-day Saints. And if you've heard the name Warren Jeffs, then that would be, I tell you what, if you are a born-again Christian of any type, you owe it to yourself to look at this docuseries. Because I see many of our churches, especially under the apostolic faith, heading in this same direction. Not verbatim, but just simply because of the direction that many churches are going in. I just recently left a church because of the whole issue of forced marriage. Because of the whole issue of forced marriage and human trafficking. And for those of you who don't know human trafficking, forced marriage is human trafficking. I had to look up and Google a bunch of information my own self. But like I said before, like I'm going to continue to say throughout the coming months, you really need to pay attention to the whole Roe v. Wade thing. Because everybody that is anti-Roe v. Wade does not really care about the this is why I said at the beginning of this podcast, thank you, Jesus, that even though we're celebrating Juneteenth becoming an official holiday, and there are moves to try to make it a paid holiday, which, that's cool. For those people who get paid holidays, that work in jobs that get paid holidays. I worked in one. I got a chance to have one job during the course of my lifetime that offered, like, we used to tease when we did hair and call them jobs that basically you get paid for Groundhog Day. Like, you get those holidays off and you get paid for them. So it was nice because it's always nice not to have to miss any money. Right now, I'm at a phase in my life where I really want to work for myself as a content creator. So that is the direction that I'm wanting to go in. With my blogs and everything else, I want to get to the point where I don't have to work an outside job and I can just go ahead and create content and work for myself that way. I'm going to end this for a minute and I'll be right back.